I think you start.
Yeah, please start.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very warm welcome, and we have been keeping you busy all these days. For the last few days, we have been keeping you busy at MMA. We had a nice event yesterday, the power of data science, and we had the event day for yesterday. We are having an event tomorrow at MMA. I thought once in a while you must do it from the comfort of your home. That's why we brought this event today online, because the speakers are also from the outstation, Delhi. Hence, we thought we'll do it online. Before I'll call upon speakers, a couple of people in the queue, so that we don't want them to miss out the opening session of the talk, which is very, very inspiring. Let me briefly tell you what's happening next few days in MMA, so that you join them without missing. And tomorrow, it's again a very powerful speakers discussion on service uninterpreted success story of a very, very successful senior IAS officer. Is a former governor of also Odisha, Mr. M. Rajendran, your chief secretary. He'll be talking to us along with sitting judge of Madras High Court, Mr. Suresh Kumar, then Dr. Somanathan, who is a finance secretary of Government of India, joining us online from Delhi, and Nawab of ARCAD. Then we have Mallika Srinivasan. She is the chairman and CEO of CAFE. Then also we have Mr. Shankar, IAS, who is a former chief secretary and chief vigilance officer. So we have a very, very inspiring talk tomorrow evening at MMA. It's a full house. If not registered, kindly register and join us. On 19th, this is again very, very interesting, which is topical, very current, worrying many of us, managing national defense post 62. You all worried about what is happening in Galwan, Tawang, and how secured we are. We have three experts to talk to us. Air Marshal Matrishan, one of the finest fighter pilot and authority on this. Then we have Balamurugan. He is an outstanding scientist, director of, he is the one who produces the heavy vehicle factory, the tank, the Vijayantri tanks. He is the one who produces, so that you can see how much we are well ahead in the scheme of Atmanirbhar and self-sufficiency in terms of our national security. We have Stanley Johnny, who is international affairs editor of Hindu, and also Satyamurthy will be talking to us. It's all about what's happening post 62, how well we are prepared to defend ourselves on many of the activities. Then we on the 22nd, we have Measure What Matters, Read and Grow. Again, we have three outstanding speakers, Babu Krishnamurthy Ramasamy Perumal, founder, CEO of Grab, and Arun Kumar, chairman and principal CFO of Touchstone. Then we have on Friday 23rd, India 100, growth trajectory of banks. It's the evening seminar from 6 to 8, followed by dinner. We have the outstanding bankers, which we are doing jointly with the Institute of Cost and Works Accounts. Is again not to be missed, because the role of banks are tremendously increased in the present, and how they are really sweating it out to bring out the corporate and how they are managing all the stressed assets. It will be very interesting to listen to some of the outstanding top leaders in this place. Then on Wednesday, we have discussion on free ice creams. It's all about how certain things can be made free, and we can bring the best out of things. I'm not talking about freebies in the corporate world. Ganesh Natarajan is from Canada. He's going to be talking to us. We have Venkat Kumaresan. He's a humorist, and also we have outstanding corporate leaders talking to us this evening. 5th of January, again, we have building a robust academic entrepreneurial ecosystem. This we are doing jointly with IIT Madras. IIT Madras has done some phenomenal work in the field of how they have built up entrepreneurial ecosystem in the institution, which is very, very essential. We wanted every system, every organization to follow that, more so in academic. And we have Ashwin Mahalingam, faculty, Department of Engineering, and Shankar, founder of CAMS, will be anchoring this session. On 6th of January, again, very, very interesting, decarbonizing India, charting the pathway for sustainable growth. Very, very important. Just now I was telling Maithili how things are really impacting, how we are going to take carbon credit, how we are going to work out on COP27 resolutions, how we are going to get, and how the corporate is going to really make the carbon credit worthy, so that some of the business, what you're doing with Europe and other countries, you may not be able to do if you don't follow some of the carbon credit thing. And we have again, we are discussing the paper published by McKinsey. Naveen Unni, partner McKinsey, will be anchoring this session along with Umesh Kumar. He is from GM faculty, GM quality. Then we have Ravichandran Purushothaman of Danfoss, president of Danfoss, will be talking to us on this. Then we have again the final one. Before that, we are already there. Third B. Narayan Endowment Lecture. Panchwatan, we do that every year. This time again, we have an outstanding speaker, Manish Tiwari, CEO of Amazon Consumer Business India, has agreed to come and speak to us on this. Then the next Women Business Forum talk is on 24th of January. This is again, this is in person at MMA Management Center. We have again an outstanding speaker. She's going to be talking to us on Well Left. And the speaker is none other than Bharati Bhaskar. You must be watched her on many television and many corporate discussions, and she's again outstanding speaker. So you not to miss it. She's coming to MMA. Well left is what she means is the you must have watched India-Pakistan match where Ashwin left the ball and got one extra ball to bowl, and I think next ball Virat Kohli came in, it 6 and India won. So she's going to tell us many things. You must leave it in your organization, your work, whatever is happening. You must leave it and move on, and well left sometimes helps you. Now, coming to today's event, again, we are all privileged to have this session by one of the outstanding thought leaders, speakers, experienced person, becoming powerful and unlocking your potential. We have a speaker for this evening. We have got still 70 people logged in. A few more will log in next few minutes. We have outstanding speaker, Nirupama Subramanian, co-founder and managing partner of Glow, founder and CEO of Powerful Life, and will be there. And to chair the session, we have Maithili Chandrasekhar, consumer behavior and branding strategy enthusiast. Before I formally introduce Nirupama, let me tell all the viewers warmly welcome all the viewers watched join us on Zoom and also other social media portals, webinar, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. And as usual, if you have any question, please send it to the number which is flashed on your screen. All the people watching this program on Zoom, please put your questions on screen. I request all the people who are watching on this program on Zoom, only put your question. The chat box is only for Zoom. Please don't do any of your greetings and other messages. This only interferes with the thought process of the speaker as well as the anchor, because I keep looking, some questioners come, they say, hi, I'm so and so. Please do that. And if you have any questions, please do that. And I really appreciate your understanding and for your cooperation in this regard. Let me have the privilege of introducing our distinguished speaker for this evening. The format of the event is Maithili, our anchor. She'll be leading a conversation in the 3 parts. She'll be explaining to you that. Before that, let me introduce the speaker for this evening and the chairperson for this evening. Thereafter, I'll hand over the session to chairperson. After the speech and after the question sessions are over with Maithili, then we'll open the thing for the questions from the people who are watching on webinar as well as from the Zoom. Let me have the privilege of introducing our speaker for this evening, Maithili, speaker for Nirupama Subramanian. Nirupama Subramanian has an experience of over 27 years across industries and function. After starting her career with Citibank in corporate banking, she shifted to become the general manager of Achieve Global, which was the leading training development consultant facilitator in the world. And she also a consultant, facilitator, and coach. Nirupama holds PCC certification from International Coaching Federation. She had trained over mind-boggling number, coached over 25,000 people across 75 organizations. Phenomenal number. Apart from her professional companies, Glow, a powerful solution, Nirupama is also the co-founder of My Daughter is Precious, a non-profit initiative that provides scholarship and mentoring to girls from underdeserved families and complete their college education, which is indeed a great initiative and really appreciated. And MMA does a lot of CSR initiative for poor school children, and I know how much they deserve this. Nirupama is a best-selling author of 3 books published by HarperCollins, and our latest book, Powerful, the Indian Woman's Guide to Unlocking the Full Potential, was published last year and received positive endorsement. And noted personalities like Kiran Majumdar and Debajani Ghosh, she's from NASCOM, they all endorsed it. And very warm welcome to you, Nirupama. We are indeed delighted to have you with us and looking forward to hearing your thought-provoking views and how to be powerful. It's very, everybody wants to do that. Let's hear from you and start emulating to become one powerful. Let me have the privilege of Maithili. Doesn't need introduction really, but it's my privilege to introduce Maithili Chandrasekharan, and she's the one who drives the Women Business Forum and MMA, and she's been constantly at supporting MMA and guiding things and bringing some of the outstanding speakers which are able to present it to you month after month. She has over 35 years of experience in consumer behavior and brand strategy, and she recently retired as national planning from J. Walter & Thompson. And career highlights include creative thinking, framework, models, brainstorming, published over 75 articles in leading India, US, and UK media. And she also created Brand Chakra and won Patricia Mann Award and co-authored Voice Within the book. And our specialization is brand strategy, integrated marketing communication, insight to mining and social culture, and new product development, much more. Indeed, privileged to have you with us, Maithili, and we are indeed privileged to have you as the chairperson of the Women Business Forum. Now, over to Maithili to take it forward. Once again, very, very warm welcome to all the participants who have joined us today on Zoom and other social media portals. Over to you, Maithili.
Thank you. Thank you, Group Captain, as always. So welcome everyone to another evening of the Women's Business Forum, the Madras Management Association. As always, we look forward to a lot of inspiration and motivation. As you all know, the large themes that we cover, Nirupama, are really in the broad area of increasing women's participation in the workforce. And though education of women in numbers is growing, there is a big gap between those who are getting educated and those who are entering the workforce. So over many sessions, both directly and indirectly, we have discussed what are the challenges of women choosing the lines that they want, of entering the workforce, but more importantly, of staying the course. How do they balance life? How do they navigate the challenges and the barriers? How do they stay the course? How do they then climb the ladder, and how do they break ceilings? In all this, we have had entrepreneurs, senior people, and we have sometimes focused on things like how to build your social media profile or negotiation skills. And always we have topics that are of interest. The material, core material is of interest to both genders always, but with some additional light on the woman's point of view. The reason Nirupama is here today is because a few months ago, I heard her speaking at a forum on archetypes of women and power, and about discovering your power, and I was fascinated with the things that she had to say. So today we are going to kind of break it up into three parts. The fact that Nirupama has done leadership work and consulting and coaching with 25,000 people across 75 organizations, and I presume majority men and lesser women. We want to start, Nirupama, with what are your overall experiences in leadership and coaching? What are the big themes emerging today? Where does power fit into all this? And we can come to that. And in your experience and view, what is the difference that you see in a woman's path to leadership versus a man's path to leadership? Over to you, Nirupama.
Thank you, Maithili, and thank you for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege. And I'm a Madras girl from Madras, so I have a lot of connection, and happy to be here with you. And everything you spoke about the Women's Business Forum, Maithili, is something very close to my heart. So I'm also happy to be a part of this, and this is really the work I do. Let me start with the question you asked at the end, right? The difference between men and women and their leadership journeys. And in the last 27 years, starting from when I finished my MBA from XLRI, long ago in 1994, joined the corporate world, stayed for some time, left the corporate world, and now I serve the corporate world through my leadership development work. So through all of these years, and you're right, I spend, most of my participants have been men. And one of the reasons I started my firm, Growing Leadership of Women, was because I saw these differences in the leadership journeys between men and women. So let me talk about three significant differences. The first is what I call career intentionality. When men join work, they join with the intention of sticking it through, and the fact that they have to work and they have to build a career and they have to rise to the top. And they have to stay there till they retire. So it's almost, in a way, it's like no option. I have to have a career and I want to make the best. Women enter their career with much lesser career intentionality. A lot of women I speak to are in a way quite surprised that they have lack of intentionality. It's much more difficult. They don't usually enter the workforce thinking, I have to stick it out there till the end. Usually enter thinking, I'll do my best. Let me give it a shot. And let me see, later on, who knows? My husband might move, I might have children, we'll see what happens. So I noticed that as one big difference right at the time of entering the workforce. And it hasn't changed significantly in the last 25 years. More women are entering, but also we see a big drop off at a later stage. So that is one. Second, I think in terms of what I call the career impact focus, which is focusing on building your brand, networking, doing all the things outside doing your core job is something women don't really focus. So a lot of requests I get and a lot of focus I do on women leadership programs is building your personal brand. Think about who you are. Think about networking, getting sponsors, getting mentors. And women don't do this, again, very intentionally. Right? We have a lot of biases in our own mind about boasting, putting yourself out. It won't look nice talking about my achievements. I don't want to be seen. So there's a lot of social conditioning. So women are not really as forthright in doing, sometimes what is called office politics. A lot of women say, I don't want to do office politics. But it's actually not politics, but strategically thinking about your career once you are in the workforce. So these are some of the things where women leadership journeys are different. I think the third is this big thing we call work-life balance or prioritizing. There is a lot more responsibility that women carry about the domestic responsibilities. Right? And this creates guilt, this creates conflicts, this creates exhaustion and burnout that men don't have. A lot of a woman leader once told me, I need a wife to be successful in the workplace. I need somebody who will take care of all the domestic load so that I can focus on my career. And women don't have that kind of luxury. Very often they are balancing, both their career as well as domestic responsibilities with very little support. If they get support, it's almost like I'm so lucky I have a supportive spouse, I have supportive in-laws, so I'm able to focus on my career. And this is the reason why many women do drop off, especially at what I call the 3 M's that impact women's journeys. Marriage first, I've got married, my in-laws won't let me work, or my husband is moving to Australia, I have to move. Motherhood, big steep drop-off point. The third one, of course, is mobility with the husband, which will come at a much later stage. So because of marriage, motherhood, mobility, women don't stay the course for the long term, and therefore even looking at leadership roles and positions are a bit different. So, and because of all these three, when I coach women or when I work with women, we deal with issues like self-confidence, self-promotion, work-life balance, managing guilt, managing shame, a lot of things which men do not have to face in their journeys.
Yeah, wonderfully put. I resonated with almost every aspect of what you said. And even talking about what we have achieved, even within the family, sometimes we hesitate to spread the word and to share the thing. And yes, that bit about, I have been lucky in the support that I have got. I mean, everything you said just rang really true. Okay, so where is the whole, your specialized work on power, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Why did you choose the topic? What has the work been about? And take us through the whole, the topic that you have listing, which is why the interest in power? How are you defining power?
Yes.
How do women approach power? And what are the guidances you have in discovering our power and realizing our potential, as you put it?
Wonderful. That is, again, as a topic very close to my heart.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about power, and then I will share a few slides which will, I think, make it more visually appealing for our listeners to see what power is all about. So, for the past few years, all of us have heard of this term, women's empowerment.
Yeah.
Women's empowerment. It's some catchphrase, and for some reason that annoyed me a little. It seemed almost as though we were waiting powerlessly for somebody from outside to come and empower us. And I started doing some reading and research on power as a part of my leadership development. I came up with a few workshops. We spoke about, I did some reading on power, including some books. And that's how I got fascinated by the power and what it means by just listening to this empowerment all along. And for me, everything I saw about the distinction between men and women came because very clearly men had more power at many levels as compared to women. And, I actually do this experiment in some of my workshops where I tell people, close your eyes, and what is the first image that comes in front of your mind when I say powerful? It's usually something big and strong and masculine. Right? And even in India, some people say Durga. It's still very masculine warrior energy that they associate with power. So when this kept coming up in my workshops, I started doing my research around powerful, which meant really talking to a lot of people as well as reading a lot about power. And I saw there are basically three kinds of power. The positional power, which you get from being CEO, a prime minister, reaching a particular position, including a professor, teacher, or a parent is also in a position of power. The other is ascriptive power. Ascriptive power is power we get because we are born into a particular family, community, and culture. So gender, for example, automatically gives you power as a male, takes away power as a female. Similarly, if you're born into a majority religion, if you're born into a race which is considered superior, you have ascriptive power. But the thing is, positional power and ascriptive power can be taken away once your context changes. So in India, I might say I belong to a, fluent socioeconomic category. But when I apply for a visa to go to visit Europe, they make us wait at immigration. I know exactly how powerful I am. So if my context shifts, I may not have that power. So I started thinking about the third category of power, which is personal power. How can I empower myself so that I become more powerful? And for that, I might need to redefine what power itself means. And I need to understand how I have been kept powerless. And that is the way my work with Powerful started. So maybe I'll share a couple of slides.
Sure. Yeah.
You can tell me whenever I should stop, because
No, please.
This is a favorite topic for me, and I can go on talking about it. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I started looking at the ways people are kept from their power. And in this context, especially women. So this is what I call the 4D strategy. Whether it's patriarchy, whether it's colonialism, whether it's racism, the same strategies are used to keep people in a minority and powerless status. The first is what I call the strategy of deterrence, which means using the threat of punishment. If you cross the boundary, like if you see in this picture, I'm sure all of us are familiar with this. This is the Lakshman Rekha, which is drawn to keep Sita safe and inside. And crossing that Lakshman Rekha or the boundary puts us in great danger. So especially and I won't say it's only men, women themselves do this to other women. We keep people feeling small and keep us from doing the things we want to because there is punishment. When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I was growing up in Chennai, and my mother always used to say this: you must be home before dark, because if you stay out after dark, bad things will happen. So there is a deterrence, and also staying away from certain public spaces. You rarely see women alone in restaurants or public spaces or parks. Women are really said, don't go anywhere alone. Take somebody along. I remember seeing some movie, I think it was a Hindi movie, where this girl had to take her younger brother along for safety because it is not safe for a young woman to be alone. So deterrence makes us feel very fearful. It keeps us always worried that we'll do something wrong and we will get punished. And this exists even today. So that is the strategy of deterrence. The second is what I call diminish. People are kept from their power if you make them feel less confident. The picture, if might be familiar to some people, is from fairy tales. And always you will see it's the woman who needs to be rescued. Till date, I've rarely seen a movie where a woman rides in to rescue a man, unless it's a small child. So the feeling is that we need to be rescued. We are not capable of rescuing or looking after ourselves. And this is just one example of diminish. Actually, there's research that shows that many learned people said women are incapable of learning science, right, or doing medicine. Women's brains are smaller. women are too emotional, so they cannot be effective leaders. So we hear many of these things. In fact, just before this call, I was in another talk. I'm doing a program for women faculty from IITs. In fact, I do this at IIT Madras. And a very senior, very respected physicist told me that at the early part of the career, she was addressing the people, that people used to come and say, how come you have studied physics? How come you are here? So in fact, microaggressions like this make women feel somehow they are not as capable and as confident. And there's research that shows that women don't apply for promotions unless they feel they are 100% sure. So diminishing people unintentionally or intentionally keeps us from our power as well. The third strategy is decorate. Decorate means rewarding people for behaviors that align with what is expected of you. So if you're a good girl, ideal Indian woman, and when you think of ideal Indian woman, you know exactly how she looks. She's traditional, she's conservative, she's modest, she's caregiving, she's the perfect wife, daughter, mother, perfect employee. She doesn't talk back, she sacrifices. So we all have these notions of what this perfect woman should look like. And if we are perfect, we get rewarded. If we are not, obviously, then we are made to feel that we are good at nothing. So this quest to be the perfect everything and seeking that label of being perfect keeps women feeling constantly exhausted. The fourth is divide. We all have heard this typical mother-in-law, daughter-in-law syndrome. And, I watch some soap operas sometimes, and my mother watches and I watch along with her. And there is always this main good Indian woman character who is very religious, who goes to the temple. And there is one, as says the one Willy or one Bap, who's also a woman who is a very bad woman. Or there's a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. So we rarely see stories of women bonding together. And in fact, women themselves unwittingly become watchdogs of the patriarchy, and we prevent other women, we are judged from succeeding, we are judgmental of other women. So these are the 4 strategies. And when I do my workshops, I hear women saying, I can so relate to all of them. I myself have, felt them in very subtle ways. Nobody has to tell that to you. You receive this message from the world around you. And in fact, when I was working many years ago in Citibank, I was always thinking that I don't think I'll be able to manage such a stressful job if I have a family, because I saw very few women role models. And later on, I moved to Achieve Global. I started working. After my daughter was born, I felt very guilty because I had to leave her and go to work. So this great strategy has really played out in my life. And after that point, after my daughter fell ill, I felt very guilty that I was not at home. My baby daughter has fallen ill. So I quit my full-time job because it was so ingrained in me that I have not been a good mother. So the question you asked, therefore, Maithili, I think moving on is, what do we do? So when I researched and I found all these stories, the question was, if it is so deeply ingrained in us, what are the options? What can we do? Because this is not being done by somebody in a very blatant way that we have to organize protests. This is happening to us on a daily basis. So one of the sources I found was what we call archetypes. So again, during the research for my programs, I read a lot about archetypes from the work done by Carl Jung, from the work done by Freud. And archetypes are nothing but stories and patterns, right? If you think of a hero, you know how a hero has to behave. If you think of a mother, especially Indian mother, we know how a mother has to behave. So archetypes are very strong images and patterns that are deeply ingrained in us. And they also depend a lot upon my culture and context. And archetypes, I started looking at them as sources of power and energy. And in India, we do this very normally and easily. So, if you want wealth, you pray to the goddess of wealth, you pray to Lakshmi. If you want knowledge, Saraswati is an archetype of knowledge. So the reason that image exists is because we can connect with it and draw power from it. So I started looking at archetypes for Indian women specifically, because most of the work has been done by Western men. And, hats off to them. I draw inspiration from that work, but I couldn't relate to it. When you tell me I'm a king, I don't see myself as a king. I see myself as a queen. So I wanted to bring language. I wanted to bring terminologies. I wanted to bring context that Indian women could relate to and draw power from, especially since there have been so many biases and so many stereotypes around these archetypes. So very quickly, to share this model, which I call the 6 feminine powers model, and that's there in my book. So you can see that's my book, in which I describe this model. And when I did the interviews with the women and through my coaching work, I saw there were 6 distinct archetypes. And I've just given them the names because they connected with me. And I wanted to give them names from our context because a woman can easily connect to it very quickly. And so far, over, I think 7,000 people have read the book. Many thousands of people have done the test, which I've created for this. And I'll talk about that soon. And I found, and I was very happy to see the resonance. So there is the Kanya, the Apsara, there is the Ma, Rani, Rishika, and the Veera. What are these? These are energy sources, which are both positive and sometimes an excess or a less of this energy will not help us. So just to give you a quick example, if you see a Kanya, who's a Kanya? Kanya is a good girl. She is loyal. She is optimistic. She is devoted. She's dutiful. She's responsible. She's trusting. She's positive. So think of, typically if I were to draw from our mythology, like a Sita. She is really the epitome of the good daughter and good wife. And she is a very powerful person. But the flip side of Kanya is sometimes we see her as weak, suffering, not asserting her authority. Right? We believe Sita was powerful, but she still needed somebody to come and defend her. So this energy or this power at the flip side can make us feel very lost, make us feel submissive, make us feel very docile, and it might not help us having too much of this energy. On the contrary, if you look at the Veera, which is the warrior energy, this is the energy of being bold, being courageous, the fighting spirit, taking risks. But historically, this has not been an energy associated with women. We've had very few women warriors. In our mythology, if you look at it, women were not allowed to fight. Like Draupadi never went to war. Even Amba had to be reborn as male to go to war. Women were not allowed to fight for themselves. And this energy, even today, seen as too aggressive in a woman. It's only last year that National Defense Academy allowed women to sit for the exam and enter into fighting positions. But this is an energy we need. So we need to tap into the Veera to be leaders, to take leadership positions, to take charge of our lives. Right? But we have a history which says, like Manusmriti, in Manusmriti, Manu says a woman has to be dependent on her father as a young girl, on her husband later when she gets married, and on her son in her old age. We've grown up with this thinking that women cannot and should not be independent. So it's very difficult to access this Veera energy. Similarly, all the other sources like a Rishika, a Rani, Ma, and Apsara can be strong sources of power for us. But we have stereotypes, we have biases that prevent us from accessing this. For example, women's education. And women were denied education until very recently. Women were kept from going to schools and colleges. And that's one of the reasons why we started My Daughter's Precious. I have a 21-year-old daughter, and I'm very proud of her. She was brought up to think no less of herself than a boy. But, so we were really very passionate about education for girls. So we set up My Daughter's Precious. When I speak to some of the girls whom we support, we still see that when the family has limited money, they would rather educate a boy than a girl. So it continues today that the pursuit of knowledge, wisdom is not something women should aspire for. And in the book, I actually talk about the story of Avayar. Many of you are from the South, you will know the story of Avayar, how she was a young girl and she actually wanted to go into a spiritual mode and, devotion and write and sing songs. She couldn't do that as a young girl. She had to get married. So she prayed, and she prayed to become an old woman who is not beautiful and attractive so that she can pursue her Rishika energy. So we somehow feel that women, young women, beautiful women cannot be smart and intelligent at the same time. So this is the model, and of course, there's lots more I can talk about it. So how do we access our power through this model? One, through self-awareness. So which is why after I wrote the book, a lot of people came and asked me, what am I? Am I a Rani? Am I a Rishika? Do I have more of the Apsara? So I created a psychometric assessment tool, and I'm very proud to say this is the first and only psychometric validated assessment for women in the South Asian context. And you can take the test, you can find out what your powers are. This is mine. So you can see I am a high Rishika and I have a lot of the Kanya. Interestingly, I found my Ma energy is a little low. Ma energy doesn't mean whether you're a mother or not. It's really a very nurturing, caregiving energy. I'm much more in my head than my heart. So it is very interesting for me to get this tool. And after self-awareness, you can start working to actively build your power. To build the power which you feel you need in a particular situation. So how do we do that? Through affirmations, by changing our mindset. Through self-belief, and not thinking that I can't be pretty and I can't be knowledgeable. Or a woman, I can't be liked and I can't be respected at the same time. So we have to change our mindset, create positive affirmations. We have to work on our body disposition. The women usually are taught to shrink, to keep ourselves small, to not be seen. So we have to work on the body to feel confident and powerful as well. So I have body work, including yoga. So I've been doing yoga for 9 years and I find it very useful, and taking very specific actions. So it doesn't have to be left to chance. You can actually access your personal power, even if you don't have descriptive power, even if you don't have positional power. We can access our personal power to take up leadership roles, to take up leadership positions. And even if you're not the CEO of an organization, become the CEO of ourselves. So that's where it starts. You can become a leader in your own mind. You can start seeing yourself as a powerful person. In fact, the definition for power, which I liked and which I showed in my book, is actually from Martin Luther King. He says the power is the ability to achieve purpose. For me, power is wholehearted living, where I can live truly, freely, and honor all my strengths as well as all my dark qualities. So this is a framework for women to access their power and overcome any power blocks. Okay, that is my last slide. Of course, a lot of information. One of the ways I had to do, and this is an interesting personal story, is, my Apsara energy, I realized, was quite low. Apsara is the energy of being openly expressive, like, the dancers, the celestial nymphs, the Apsaras. Apsaras are free spirits, they are flamboyant, they don't have the shame and cringing. You find very few women who are Apsaras, maybe like a Marilyn Monroe, or in my book, I talk about Amrita Shergill. So it was very easy for me to write my book Powerful because Rishika energy, but it's not easy for me to market it. I really hesitated to get onto Instagram or social media till last year because I was like, this is not me. I don't want to show myself. I don't want to take pictures or do videos. But I have a purpose. I want to take this message. So one of the things I started doing was becoming more active on social media by accessing my Apsara energy and overcoming some power blocks that I had. So that is the way I have found this to be very useful. And now what I do is take this more and more women, and of course men as well, need to know that what is power for them and how they can support the women in their lives as a way for women to become leaders of their own lives. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
So what is the fundamental belief that a balance is the best thing to work towards? Or you use what you have and work on that? Because in my work on chakras, for example, the fundamental belief is that it should all be balanced and aligned. Nothing should be over or under. So what's the belief in this model?
I think first is be true to who you are as your core power, and access other powers as and when needed for you to be more successful, happy, and less stressed. So we may not have, we may not have exactly the same amount of power because that will not be true to who we are.
Yeah.
But to be truly powerful, I need to know when I am overdoing something, when I am not using something, and flex and overcome my power blocks to access the power that I need. So I said, like, I'm a core Rishika. I'm not going to change that because being a core Rishika helps me. But if I really want to do what I want to do, if I feel truly powerful, Rishika energy alone is not enough. I will need to access my Apsara, I need to access my Veera, sometimes my Ma as well. So it's about achieving the optimum balance for what I want to do to achieve my purpose. So that's really the philosophy around this.
Just talk us through a couple of other examples, if you can, of say how a Ma, somebody who is high on Ma, but what might be the problems facing somebody who is overly strong on something and deficient on something else, and what might be the actions to be taken to the what kind of situations will demand that the archetype which is low needs to come up? Like you gave an example of, if you want to make the book popular, you have to be out there. So talk us through some more examples of this.
Absolutely. And I have lots of case studies in my book which will exactly illustrate that. More than that, when I coach a lot of women, I see exactly this. Right. So I'll tell you one, very recent example of a woman, of a leader. I'll say of a leader who happens to be a woman who I am coaching. And, she was having a lot of trouble managing her team. I'll give you a very example. And we found out that she was very high on Ma energy. She was very nurturing and she was very caregiving. And she used to be very relaxed and lenient with her team members in the sense that she would let them do what they want. And she would take on their work on herself, thinking that this is my role as a leader. And she was not getting the results that she wanted. So she was overdoing. Then we realized that she was too much of a Ma. She hesitated to pull up her team members. She hesitated to have these courageous conversations to give them feedback because she was always saying, poor thing. They have so much of a problem. They have this. She would easily get swayed when they came to her with their problems, and she will say, poor thing, that's okay. Let me take care of it. And she was going through burnout. She was not taking care of herself, which is what a lot of Mas are prone to do, is give a lot to the others and not take care of themselves. So we actually said she needs to balance the Ma energy. She shouldn't give up her empathy, compassion, helpful, caring nature, but she needs much more of the Veera energy to be able to take charge, speak up for herself, and she needed the Apsara energy, which is focusing on self-care. So the Ma thinks caring for myself is selfish. I am valued only if others need me and if I do things for others. And she was doing the same thing with her family as well. She was running to manage her children, her husband, her household, and she was not taking care of herself. She had a lot of physical health issues, and her team was getting out of hand. And if she felt very panicky, then she would start micromanaging, which is the extreme of the master, smothering people. So we said, okay, this is the mindset. She was actually equating her self-worth with doing things for others, which was not helping her beyond a point. So we said, okay, what can you do? Start taking care of yourself. It's not selfish. Focus on your health. Start giving some feedback to the people and pushing back when your team members give you work. It's one thing when your boss gives you work. You're saying, I'm doing all of this for my team members. So make them independent. Let them stand on their own feet and don't take anything on yourself. So that is the way, you can bring about some kind of a balance. It doesn't mean you should stop being a Ma. But stop going into the negative stream, what we call the extreme polarities of Ma, which will not going to help you. And typically, how do you find out you need some help? High stress, feeling of out of control, you're not able to do what you want to do. That's a good indicator that there is a power imbalance. And you need to start, therefore, looking at what's happening out here. But we are so habituated to do more of what we are. Faced with the challenge, we get into the extremes of what we are rather than changing and doing something completely different. So our power becomes a power block because we do too much of it under stress. That's how you can change. And sometimes you adopt a persona as well. So you may not internally change, and you might adopt a persona and start doing things to make you look like somebody else. And one of the examples I give is Jayalalitha. How to succeed in the political world. She couldn't afford to be seen as a Kanya or an Apsara. Right? That glamorous film star, nobody was respecting her. So she had to adopt that larger than life persona of Amma. Make a very conscious shift in thinking and body and behavior so that she could be successful
and effective,
and effective in her new role. But if you're not doing that very well, that also has its pitfalls. So you have to do it mindfully. You have to imbibe it internally and then adopt the energies that you need to succeed.
Wonderful. Wish I had come across this 10 years ago. I might have used
It's never too late.
Yeah, I know, it's never too late.
I know. I also, I'm in my 50s. I have a grown-up daughter and I've gone through my own journey. So I also think I wish this had come to me many years ago and I would have made slightly different choices. But I'm glad to be able to do this now. And, my area of passion now is to work with a lot of young women and see how they can use this as well.
I think it's really coming through as a nice mix and very specially gives us an Indian understanding in some way of of these things. And I would imagine there are parallels for men as well, or would that be very different?
There are parallels for men. In fact, a lot of work has already been done for men, right? So the default archetypes we have, the four core archetypes, king, warrior, lover, and magician or sage are all male archetypes. It is there, it exists. Though I must say that after the book came out, a lot of men came and said, what is an Indian version of the male?
Exactly. Because the
archetypes?
Examples you're quoting is the Western archetype.
It's the Western. It would be pretty similar. So I know there is work, looking at the 5 Pandavas as 5 archetypes also.
Yeah, that's
like
a lot.
There's some people who've done work on that.
Yeah.
But if you just, do a parallel, you can find it's the Raja, it's the saint, it's the, the jester. Interestingly, there is no strong caregiver archetype in the male archetype pattern.
In the Western, but I would imagine an Indian model would have a father or a son element more strongly than what is there in the Western archetype.
Yeah. There is interestingly, there is no father as a caregiver archetype. The father is usually a
authority.
king,
Yeah.
the authority, the stern patriarch, the provider and protector, but not seen as a caregiver, not seen as somebody who tends or who is affectionate or who's got the responsibility of connection, engaging and empathy with children. So it's very interesting. And now I've started doing some, research and work on this as well. But we have the good son, like the Rama is the good son, the noble king, the warrior energy, like Arjuna, the wise man, like Yudhishthira. So all of these archetypes do exist. And, all our gods are anyway energies, like creator, preserver, destroyer, also archetypal energies. So I just wanted to bring a female perspective to this as well.
Yeah, great. So coming to the last bit, Nirupama, tell us about your personal, and you have talked about your leadership style and unlocking your power, but corporate life and then this whole independent work and writing fiction and then writing this non-fiction, and then in the middle of all this, there's also NGO that you run. So tell us a little bit of how. This is a very typical question, and you will say, why don't we ask men this question? But yet I'm asking, how did you manage? How did you multitask? How did you manage? And what were the lessons on leadership and power in the way that you navigated and managed to do so much?
Yeah, that's interesting because, when you say that, my first thing is also a little self-doubt, which is I'm not doing too much. That's an interesting conversation that's happening.
It is a lot. Take it from me, it's a lot. Yeah.
A lot of, so I think, firstly, Maithili, I'll say it was a journey, but having clarity on my values and needs, I think was very important. So when I started off working, I did an MBA. I was your typical good ambitious girl who wanted to get a good job. For me, success at that time meant money and status and being associated with big brands, which is by Citibank. And I was quite proud of that. When I realized it wasn't giving me that much joy, and it wasn't really what I was skilled at. Citibank is a great place to be, and it's not because it was the organization, but the domain was not something that I really connected with. And through the next few years, after I became a mother as well, I really spent some time thinking about what's important for me. So I would say the first thing is having a lot of clarity on your values and priorities. So for me, I think what was really important was finding joy in the work that I did, being able to use some of my own inherent skills, like the Rishika and me wanted to be used in a particular way. I wanted to write. It was always a dream for me. And I used to write all these essay writing competitions as a child, and it was a dream for me to write books someday. So that I wanted to do certain things that gave me joy and also enabled me to use my skills. Economic independence was very, independence is a core value for me, and that meant economic independence. So I needed definitely to earn my own living. My husband and I are batchmates from MBA, so there was no way I was going to say. I always saw us as equals. So I was like, I really need to earn my own living, and I can't be a dependent spouse, and that's for me actually. And also independence of work. I realized I'm pretty well on my own. I like flexibility, freedom, the ability to design my own life. So I think it was about honoring my values. So that was the first part. The second is prioritizing. Once I have clarity on my values, it's also about eliminating what I don't want to. Here I will say I'm lucky. I'm lucky because in India, we have people to whom certain tasks can be delegated. I'm fortunate to be in that socio-economic strata where I have somebody to clean the house and somebody to cook. And I decided I will not get into that. I do not want to be a perfect homemaker or a housekeeper. My family needs to be fed. My house needs to be reasonably clean. And I will not get into details with that. So that was a call I made. Sometimes, yes, I used to feel guilty when some of my, friends used to say, "Oh, I cooked this for my child." I used to feel, "Oh, am I a bad mother?" I said, that is not priority for me, and my family is taken care of. So it's also about eliminating certain things that I don't see as critical and delegating. Right? Anyway, we can send our children to school. That's already outsourced. So outsourcing and delegating things which don't give me joy, which can be done. So that's the other way that I actually, do it in terms of how do I manage. I used to travel a lot when my daughter was young. So the third thing I used to do was actually being very mindful about my time. So it's having the balance between, yes, I want economic independence. I always say I'm a daily wage laborer, right? I get paid for actually the number of days, the number of coaching hours. But sometimes I have to make a very mindful choice that, yes, this 1 week is for vacation, is for family time, and it's okay if I'm not working at that time. So it's about making mindful choices. It's about saying, I do want to write this book, so I'm going to take this amount of time to make sure that book is written. So there's never a perfect work-life balance, but you're always making, I would say, mindful choices about where you want to put your energy and time. So now my daughter studies in the US and she's coming home for the winter. So I'm also making a mindful choice that I'm going to cut down on the amount of other work assignments I will take at this time. So that's one way of doing it. I would say the last thing is get help and support. I was not very good at doing this early on in my career. I would hesitate to ask people for help and I would want to do everything by myself. Getting help, whether it's from a spouse, whether it's from friends, or whether it's actually from hiring people. So for my business, now I have an assistant. I have somebody who manages my daughter's Precious as a project. So I said, I don't have to do it on my own. We get help so that they can handle some of the things that I don't have to get into, so that I can focus on what I want. Which is what I always tell women who also always ask me, this work-life balance. These days, after the pandemic, there is no perfect work-life balance, whether for men or women. We have to look at work-life integration. What is the model that works for me? It may not work for X, it may not work for Y, but what works for me in a way that I have some joy and happiness and I see some stress and I focus on the important and must do's and leave out some of the nice to do's. So that's also a call, I think.
Great. Almost every woman speaker has made this point of ask for help, you know. And your point on balance, just last month, Anuradha, who you know as well, made this point that don't look for balance every day, but see in the long term, if the, I mean, this month, if the balance can be, go on some other side, this year can be about something else.
Something else.
Many of the women have made the point that don't just think about what you want to do, but think deeply about why you want to. So what I got from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that beyond economic independence, for you, it was using your skills and joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think now it's also about having a clear, I mean, I can call it purpose or mission about what is it that I really want to do in the world.
Yeah.
Right? What is it you can call it calling for some people, or what is it that I really want to do in the world?
What is it?
Yeah. So for me right now, and advantage is I keep doing these sessions for other people, so I keep tweaking it a little bit. So for me, it is now, I would say for me, it's to live in my full power and enable other people, especially women, to do so. Yeah. And I do this through the work of coaching, facilitation, and writing. So my writing is a means to help people to stand in their own power.
Wonderful, Nirupama, absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, and I'll hand it over to Group Captain for questions. That's a great note to end on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nirupama. Very fascinating insights, not only for women, many men should follow what you have said. Yes. Very valuable for them. They have to really progress and do well. We got more than 480 participants watching this program live. Many will watch over the period. And we got a couple of questions. We got next few minutes left now. We'll take as many questions as possible. And start with Mary Joseph. She's from Chennai. Our question is, Madam, can a woman can a woman work with courage? The argument is in the head says, I need the job very badly. So I cannot afford to be courageous because the risk of losing my job is more. How do you reconcile these two apparently opposite things actually? Because this is the one thing is bothering me because it happened to me personally. That's what Mary is telling.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And, thank you for sharing that. That's a tough call because there is fear on one hand. The fear of losing the job sometimes can be very real. And there is, what we call courage or maybe a pull to do the right thing on the other hand. So I think, firstly, I have to say we all have to find our own solutions. But two things that will help. I think one is to be very clear. Again, I said, what is your, order of priorities? What is the order of values? And what is the one thing which is absolutely important? If your self-respect and self-esteem is being done, is something which is at stake, I think it's very important to be courageous because you cannot sustain a job where you feel diminished or you feel disrespected. It is not going to be emotionally or mentally healthy for you to be in a situation where you're constantly feeling that way. So I think that is going to be extremely important. The second is not to think that you are going to do it on your own. Have the belief and self-belief that, yes, you will have a support system. And if not this job, have the belief that you will find something else that is going to work for you. So most of us think this is the end of the day. Oh, I'm fired. This is the end of the world. Oh, my spouse is leaving me. This is the end of the world. But we all are much more resilient than we give ourselves credit to be. So I think, what builds resilience? Self-confidence, as well as having a good support system. So again, I would say, in the systems like this, find who is your source of courage and support, who's a role model, who's a source of inspiration that you can draw on, reach out, talk to people about something so that you can get the courage to go ahead. And very often in tough situations, we forget all the strengths that we have. I think it's also important to look at what are, the things that are working for you, from which you can draw courage from again. So I would say typically it's the Veera energy that is needed, the warrior. Sometimes the warrior is in us, but it's the warrior, she's sleeping. Maybe it's awaken the warrior with the knowledge that you can have both. It doesn't have to be this or that. Speaking up for yourself, especially in today's world and environment, I think is important rather than suffering in silence.
Brilliant, brilliant, madam. So more the next question, this from Mr. Nathan from Bangalore. Madam, you spoke about work-life balance. Many a time women take it on themselves that the household or the children are their responsibility and their right actually. And I think you also mentioned you resigned the job because your daughter, you felt guilty.
Yeah.
When men come forward to help, they're not encouraged, unlike the Western countries. My wife really never allowed me to do anything, which she thinks, no, it's not your job. Leave it, you'll mess it up. How do I, how do women really get to come out of this mindset and start allowing somebody want to come and do the work? I think most welcome, and they must take help, as Maithili said. They don't take seek help. How do you make the woman to understand this element?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is so important. And I'm so glad many men are coming forward these days to do that. So I would say, it goes back to the fear that many women have. If I'm not this good homemaker and good mother, which means I do everything, then I'm a bad person. I think fundamentally that mindset needs to shift. And a lot of women don't have any other identity, right? Especially if the person sees herself as a homemaker and a mother. If she sees those roles as critically important, then you don't want to give that away. So I would say for a husband who wants to help his wife succeed, first tell her that she will continue to be a good wife, mother, and a homemaker, even if she gives away a part of her job. And then let her tap into what other dreams she has. Right? If she wants to do something else, even if it is reading more or doing something, giving away some of the job will help her to realize her other dreams. And then there is always, the time when your children will leave you and go away and you will have not much to do. I think it's very, very important that apart from women need to empower men to take up more caregiving roles as well. We need to give up the fear that people will say we are bad or inefficient or sloppy if we are not in the kitchen and in the house the whole day. And reach out for our dreams as well. And if a spouse is coming forward to help us, look at it as help and involvement, not interference. A lot of women think it's interference. It's not interference, it's involvement. And involvement of your spouse in childcare and home care is extremely important. So just as men need to give up insecurities at the workplace and deal with women entering the workplace and achieving leadership positions, women need to give up our own insecurities and allow men into the kitchen, allow men into the school playground, and make sure they are fulfilling their responsibilities there as well.
Till we got another 3-4 minutes, I'll try and squeeze in 2 more questions before we let you go. And this is a question from Ms. Radhika from Chennai. He said, Madam, passion, but with caution. This is the advice I always got every time from the beginning, right from a childhood. Is the advice which I always got. What resulted in most of the time because of this advice is that I have all the time fear of failure. Yeah. How do I overcome this constantly? Because it's been imbibed in me that, caution every time.
Yeah, which is so true. This is what I call the debtor strategy. Right, even I have grown up with that, and I think many people here might know Tamil, so I'll say, my mother always used to say, "Jagrade, Badram, be careful, don't do this." Or many girls are told, after marriage you can do whatever you want. So that is a part of the overall deterrent strategy, which tells us you can do whatever you want, but comes from a desire to keep us safe, to protect us from this world. So, and I think what you also mentioned is internal fear of failure. I think the first thing is for us to make sure our dreams have to be bigger than our fears. When I coach women, I actually do 2-3 things. One is actually look at what will be the impact if you pursue your passion. What are all the good things that you can do if you pursue your passion, and if you let go of the fear of failure? Just imagine and visualize the kind of world, kind of life you will be living if you didn't have that particular fear. So I think that is very, very important to create a very visually compelling future picture for you that you could let go of this and fully pursue, what would that look like? Secondly, address the very specific fear, right? Also look at what is the worst that can happen. Right? And this picture of what is the best that can happen should ideally be more compelling than what's the worst that can happen. What's the worst? You will fail. So what's the big deal? It's not going to be very different from where you are today, right? Today, you haven't achieved anything. So at least if you give it a shot, you will have learned something. People will say at least you have tried, versus living a passionless, fearful life. It's better than to give it a shot and fail once, twice. And failures are nothing but learning opportunities. Redefine your failure as a learning opportunity, and then it will not look so terrible. I'll tell you from my personal experience, I wanted to write a book from the time I was a teenager. But I had a lot of fear as to if it will flop, people will not like it, I will get bad reviews. So I published my first book only when I was 39 years old, whereas I could have done it much earlier, right? And so what? So I didn't win the Nobel Prize or whatever, but I published a book, and I'm so glad I took the risk of rejection and failure. At least I can say I published a book. Now I published 3 books. I've done something that I can be proud of, rather than when you're 85, say, should have written a book. So I say, just go for it.
True,
I
absolutely
would
true,
just
madam.
like to add,
Go ahead,
that
ma'am.
it doesn't even have to be work or earning. Even if the woman pursues her interests and her passions, can be gardening, it can be music, anything, it actually ends up benefiting the home, the relationships, and the children. So maybe that is another angle to look at.
True, madam. I still remember the Air Force Academy, my instructor said, wish you grand failures. And what do you say? No. Failure, you learn, and success intoxication.
Yeah.
Get more failures, but you are a more wiser and better man. One last question for you this evening, madam.
Sure.
This is from Nirmala from Pondicherry. She says, power is intoxication, and you enjoy the power, you want more power. But power is a state of mind. How do you enhance this concept in women in India? It's a state of mind what you should really enhance. But how do you imbibe them in Indian women?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because yes, power does have negative connotations. And especially for women, we say, no, power goes to our head, and women becomes too arrogant, too big for herself. Who does she think she is? So we always have this negative connotation that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So for me, I think what has worked is redefining power. Redefining power as I said, the ability to be fully who you are and do what you want, and of course, add value and live your purpose. Right? So I think that is the balance that power should bring. In fact, I would say the other way, with power comes greater responsibility. With greater power comes greater responsibility, and ability to use your power well will make a significant difference to the quality of your life and the other life. Right? So if you let it go to your head, this is actually what positional power does. Oh, today I am so and so, and that power goes to my head. Today I'm a famous actor, I'm very powerful. Today I'm CEO, I'm very powerful. Positional power can be intoxicating, but can also be taken away very quickly. So I would say work on our personal power, which is no matter what position I hold, no matter which situation I am, I feel confident, I feel comfortable, and I fully accept who I am. I think that is the power which we should, work towards, and that's the power which will keep us on track even when we get positional power at any point of time.
Thank you so much, madam. I think we have come to the end of the session, and very, very thank you for patiently responding to each of the questions, which are very, very relevant and very thought-provoking insight. And I am quite sure large number of viewers watch this program will immensely benefit, and the takeaway will be they'll become more powerful and unlocking their potential, which is very good for their organization, for themselves. Since you are separated, you are away from us, you're online. We are delighted from MMA to present you a memento. We give a digital memento on behalf. This is what we do. This is what we do actually on your behalf, and we do a lot of CSR work at different schools. You also do it with a lot of children. We will be privileged to present textbooks to the needy, poor children. That's what we do on your behalf. We keep adding. This is what we want to do that, and really thank you so much. Maybe Maithili would like to do any concluding remarks before we close. Maithili. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And I am actually left feeling that perhaps we are more powerful than we realize already.
True.
Yeah.
Absolutely
You
true.
know,
Absolutely.
you ask many men, they'll say power la ava kaila, you know. So let's not
I'm
think
telling you,
that we
you're all
don't
more
have
powerful
enough.
than what you think. Actually, I
Yeah.
know nothing
think-
moves in my house without our
Yeah,
parents' interference.
So we might be actually more powerful. So
True.
I think what I really learned is think about what your power is and the different kinds of powers that you need to draw at different life stages in different situations. And how do you strike that balance and move forward? Thank you very much, Nirupama. This will stay in our minds for a long time.
Thank you so much, Maithili. Thank you, Captain. And thank you to all of you who've been listening. And of course, there is more information in my book and on the website. And if it can be of use to even one person, it would make me very happy.
Do take the test. I would ask everyone men and women to take
Yes,
the test. It's very
yes.
interesting. It's very, it tells you about yourself very nicely. Yeah.
We'll publish it also in our magazine with the embedded videos, and quite a number of people watch our magazine, read our magazine, and we're ready to do that. And we'll keep in touch when you visit next time.
Absolutely.
You must visit MMA. And,
I will definitely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you
for
all the
having
viewers.
me.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure
Thank you,
to be
viewers.
Thank
Joined
you.
us on
Bye.
Zoom. Other viewers, thanks so much. Stay safe until we meet again. See you tomorrow evening at MMA. Bye bye. Good night. And